Hi everyone, my name's Kate Kalthoff. Welcome to a Stamping to Share video. I was recently asked to share a simple but wow card, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's kind of a hard combination to come up with, but I think I did it with this card. This is actually a pretty simple card to stamp, but yet it has the wow factor. Look at all those fun snowflakes. Now, in Minnesota, I actually see pine trees every single day of my life, and I look out at them when I'm stamping in my office. And so, I don't know, we're surrounded by pine here in Minnesota, so pine trees are close and dear to my heart. And so I really love this stamp set. It's called Ornamental Pine, and you can see it is geared a little bit towards Christmas, but you could actually use it any time of the year, anytime you want to celebrate pine trees. And then also we are using another one of my all-time favorite stamp sets, Gorgeous Grunge. We are using these small little dots right here to create the snow floating through the pine trees. So let's get started. The first thing that I want to do is have you create your base. This is Soft Sky. It's 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. And we're just going to fold that in half. I'm going to use my bone folder, give it a nice little fold here so it'll lay flat for us. And then we're just going to go ahead and set that aside because we're not going to actually need that until quite a bit later. We are also going to need a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of garden green cardstock. And again, we won't need that for a bit, so I'm going to also set that aside, but just in case you wanted to prep that right now. Then the next thing we're going to need is some Whisper White paper. This is cut at 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and I've gone ahead and I've done 2 panels. This will be on my card buffet this month, and so rather than have my customers get confused as to which is the inside panel and the outside panel, I go ahead and make both panels the same size. Now the Soft Sky paper is actually light enough that you wouldn't even need an inside panel in white, but I decided to just go ahead and do it. And so now what we're going to do is I'm going to bring some my grid paper here into the picture, and I'm going to do some stamping with you. So the first thing that we're going to do is using some Lost Lagoon ink. I have one of my stamping wedges from a Stamp and Sponge, and I just cut my Stamp and Sponge into 6 pieces. So this is what I'm doing. I'm starting off the paper, and I am just bringing in the color from the left and from the right. And that again is with Lost Lagoon. And I think that looks good, so we can leave it at that. Then the next thing we're going to do is using our garden green ink, we are going to stamp our pine branch. So let me go ahead and stamp this up here in the upper right corner. And I'm just going to make sure that branch is kind of coming in off that top corner, right like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and also stamp that branch on the left side. And we are going to bring that branch down just a little bit and stamp it like this. Okay, so we have our 2 main branches in this picture. Now, because I don't really care for the look of green pine branches, because they're usually a nice brown, but I don't care to ink that up with markers and then fill it in with green. That takes a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is using one of our blendability pens, and this one is the dark pen in our crumb cake set. I'm going to use the fine tip, and I'm just going to go in and just tap on some color onto these branches. And I don't want to just fill it all in because I kind of am stippling the color on. I don't really care for the totally filled in look. I think you want to keep some nice openness. And so we are just going to kind of gently stipple some nice brown into these branches, and that's all it takes. So we now have these lovely brown branches in our picture. And now we're going to go ahead and do the pine cones. We are going to use Early Espresso and the pine cone stamp. And at least around here, most of our pine cones grow in clusters, and usually it's a cluster of 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and stamp a cluster on each branch. Now it does look okay to stamp them singly as well. And there we go. So we have our pine cones all clustered. Now, if you've ever looked into a pine tree, it's actually pretty filled in with branches. So I'm going to re-ink that pine branch, and I am going to fill in some of this open area here with more pine branches. We're going to get this very lush. This is going to be a very healthy pine tree. And then I think one more spot, and we'll just add a few branches right in here. There we go. So now I think this actually is beautiful. It completes our look. And then we can take our sentiment, and I will ink that up again in early espresso. And I'm going to set this right here. Give it a nice press without wiggling. You don't want to wiggle. And we have our Christmas wishes stamped here in the bottom right. And I think that looks lovely. At this point, you have two options. You can go ahead, set this aside, and let it dry, which is probably a good idea because some of this ink is still a little bit wet. Or you can go ahead and do your stamping with some Versamark to create the snowflakes. I'm going to show you the difference. This is the card that I showed you originally, and that's been stamped after, you know, the Versamark was put on after it was dry. And it looks really good. You can see that the flakes are very individual. This particular card I also made, and I'm going to hold this really still and get it up to the camera. Maybe. Hopefully it's focusing for you. You'll notice there's a fine sheen of snow falling through here. My daughter says, "Oh, Mom, it looks kind of like the wind's blowing in this one." And it's true. If you've ever been in Minnesota and seen wind blow through the pine trees, you know that there's just a super fine mist of snow that will come off the pines when the wind blows. And so you can also get that look. And that's done when you put your Versamark on before, like if I put this on right now before it's totally dry, you would get some fine shavings and it would look like the wind is blowing. So it's kind of up to you what look you're after. I think what I'm going to do for this particular one is I did stamp one in advance, so here it is, and this one's nice and dry, so I'm going to use this now with our gorgeous grunge, the snowflake part, and we are just stamping it with the Versamark. So then it's kind of hard to keep track of where your snowflakes are because you can't really see the Versamark. It doesn't really show up. So you just kind of have to guess your best as to where you started and let off. And it's okay to get snowflakes, you know, down into this white part too. It just kind of gives it some dimension. And then your snowflakes will be revealed once we add the white embossing powder. All right, here we are with the powder, and I am just going, I've got this great big tray here, kind of keeps everything confined, and we are just going to take this white embossing powder and sprinkle it onto our card, and now we'll be able to see just where those snowflakes landed. And then tap it off so we get all the excess off, and here are our snowflakes. And they don't show up real well. You have to use the heat gun to get them to show up nicely. Here's one that I've already done. This I did before the video started so that I could use this without having to go through the heat gun step with you. So what I'm going to do now is just add some snail to the back of this, and we are going to assemble our card. So here is our completed card front. We're going to grab that green paper that I talked about in the beginning, this garden green. I'm going to set this on right here in the middle of that garden green paper. And then we have our soft sky, and I'm going to actually pop this up on dimensionals. I think that looks, I don't know, it just gives it a little bit more of a wow factor. Simple but wow. Remember, that's what we're going for with this card. And I will take off these peelies, and then we can flip it over and then put this right onto the front of our card. Center that in. And the front of our card is complete. Now for the inside panel of our card, whoops, all you have to do is add a little bit of the Lost Lagoon, do a little bit of stamping, and then I didn't bother with the snowflakes or anything, but you could if you wanted to. Then you can just add this panel to the inside of your card, like so, and your card is complete. There's the inside and the outside. And hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial. I've sure enjoyed helping you learn how to do a simple but wow card. Here's the original one that I shared in the beginning. Hope you have a great day. Thanks so much for stopping by Stamping to Share. If you'd like to place an order for Ornamental Pine or Gorgeous Grunge, please go to my Stamping to Share blog at www.stampingtoshare.com. I truly appreciate you. Bye-bye.